Hello and welcome back to the next episode of First Down Fantasy. As always, I am Ryan.
And I'm Logan.
And today we are doing our top 10 tight ends for the 2021 fantasy football season. And if you are new to the channel, thank you for joining us. And it would be appreciated if you like and subscribe. And make sure you check out all our other videos. We have the wide receivers, the quarterbacks, and running backs all ranked accordingly. We have the quarterbacks all 1 through 32. And then we have the top 20 running back and wide receiver videos. So just look them up. You can search them in there. Be pretty cool if you check them out. But today, as I said, we're doing tight ends. We're only going to be doing top 10 because kind of we all know that once you get past 10 tight ends, it starts to slowly dip. So there's no need to go in-depth on tight ends or anything. If you hear any barking, that's just dogs. So I apologize for that. And without further ado, we are going to start off with our number one tight end. We have Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs. This is pretty much a no-brainer. Travis Kelce is one of the only tight ends, I think, ever. Logan can probably test this more because he's a Kansas City Chief fan, but he had, 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons as a tight end. He had over 100 receptions last year. He was one of only 2 tight ends to do it. Also had 145 targets and finished with almost over 1,400 yards. And for your tight end position, that is pretty much a cheat code. It's pretty much having another number one wide receiver in your tight end spot. And for Travis Kelce, he has the best quarterback, in my opinion, in the league playing for his team and one of the best offenses. So he's going to have so much opportunity this year that he's in a tier of his own, I feel like, for the tight ends. And he would be a no-brainer number one pick that you take.
Yeah. I believe it's 4 or 5 straight seasons now that he has been the number one tight end in fantasy. He's consistent. He's almost always healthy. Like, that's the issue when you look at like a guy like George Kittle. Like, he was the top drafted tight end a couple years ago, but he plays so physical. He plays such a grueling style. He gets the injuries. Kelce has never had that. Fingers crossed, keeps going that way. But he's the number one target in the best offense in football. Like, last year, he was on pace to lead the league in receiving before he sat out week 17. Like, that's not something tight ends do. I think I would probably take him above any of the wide receivers this year. Like, he's that big of a positional advantage for me.
Yeah, it's pretty much him and Tyreek Hill that you have to want to have in that Kansas City offense. And when you look at the other tight ends we're going to mention, there's only really 2 I would put anywhere near his tier, but it's almost like a Travis Kelce tier 1, and then there's a tier 2, and then there's everybody else pretty much.
Yep.
All right, moving on to number 2, we have Darren Waller from the Las Vegas Raiders. And as I mentioned with tiers, I think Darren Waller is in the same type of tier as Travis Kelce because he finished last season with 107 receptions on 146 targets, which is actually more than Travis Kelce, but he did finish with a little bit under 1,200 yards, which is still really good for a tight end. And in Vegas, they don't really have a whole lot of offensive weapons that are going to take away his target share in Las Vegas. And with them kind of being a middle-of-the-road team, they're going to be down in a lot of games, and he'll be on the field for the majority of those snaps. And he's going to see a lot of work. And Derek Carr loves Darren Waller as his main target, and I don't think that's going to change this season.
No, Darren Waller excuse me.
Jesus.
Oh my goodness, Logan. He's just used as the safety blanket in that offense. Like, that's why you see the big yardage disparity between him and Kelce, even though the same amount of targets. You're just getting a lot less yards per target, but if you're in a full PPR, a half PPR, he's a monster because he gets targets on targets on targets. Like, again, there are, I would say, 2, possibly 3 tight ends that I trust to be the top target in a competent offense, and it's Waller, Kelce, and Kittle. So if you can get one of those guys, I have a hard time outside of injury seeing it go wrong.
Yeah, like Darren Waller, he's been a very healthy player the last few seasons that he's been near the top of this list. But yeah, I'm not really overly worried about his health concerns. But as I said already, like that offense does not have an elite position player other than maybe Josh Jacobs, which I'm still kind of iffy on this season. So there's not a number one wide receiver to take any of those targets away from Darren Waller.
Yep.
Moving on to number 3, we have George Kittle from the San Francisco 49ers. And this is the last player that I would put in tier 1 of tight ends just because, like Logan already said, it's Kittle, Kelce, and Waller pretty much, and that's who you'd want to take early on in a fantasy draft when you're looking maybe round 2, round 3. And you know what? George Kittle wasn't overly healthy last year, only having 48 receptions on 63 targets with 634 yards. But when he's healthy, he is one of the main options on that San Francisco offense. He has the ability to go downfield, to be a downfield threat. He's a check down guy, obviously, but you know what? If he stays healthy, then George Kittle can finish as a top 2, maybe top 3 tight end, and that would be a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think he's the only guy who could actually take Travis Kelce on as the number 1 tight end in fantasy. The issue with him has always been health. Like, he had the one fantastic season. He was unbelievable. But since then, he's really struggled to stay on the field, which could be fluky, could be the physical nature of his play. I think the only other thing you got to watch out for with Kittle is they've added, since he kind of has been missing time, they've added Deebo Samuel, they've added Brandon Ayuk. Those are both really good players. Now, again, I still think Kittle is a monster. He's going to be great if he can stay on the field, but there's just more questions on what his role is than these other two, which is why I have him at number 3.
Yeah, and I wouldn't really worry about if people are worried that there's maybe Trey Lance plays. Does that change George Kittle? If anything, everything I've heard out of camp has been he has been getting He's been getting touchdown passes from Jimmy Garoppolo and touchdown passes for Trey Lance. So obviously he's never going to be out of the offense there. So you don't have to worry about anything like that from him.
Yeah, he's just too important a part of the offense to really ever get phased out.
Moving on to number 4, we have TJ Hockenson from the Detroit Lions. Now, I know you might be thinking the Detroit Lions, ew, garbage, right? Gross. But there's nobody else there in Detroit to take away those targets from him. It's basically TJ Hockenson and DeAndre Swift. And if TJ Hockenson can stay healthy, he's going to be the check down guy for Jared Goff, just to keep the chains moving. And they will I don't want to be disrespectful, but they will pretty much always be down in football games this year, I feel like.
Yep.
So they're not going to be good, which means he's going to see a lot of field time. So he's going to get a lot of targets. Even last year, he finished with 67 receptions on 101 targets for 723 yards, which is really good. It's top 5 tight end numbers. And I think it's only going to get better with the fact that there's no Kenny Golladay, there's no Marvin Jones, I apologize. Different sport. Marvin Jones Jr., so there's no big-time pass catcher to take away those targets from him now.
Yeah. All the reports out of camp are the top wide receiver would be Tyrell Williams. Noted, just pure deep ball guy. Like, that's all he's ever been. So maybe, I think he's in his 30s now. Maybe this is when he steps up, but I have a hard time seeing him take any serious volume, so it's going to be Hockenson. The question is Jared Goff and that offense going to be able to get it done? That's the only concern with Hockenson for me. And again, he's had, I believe, some health issues as well, which I feel like that's just kind of the normal for tight ends. It's a tough position. So usually year 3, especially with tight ends, is where you see them kind of start to either come into their own or kind of sink. So hopefully we see him really take a step up. He was drafted to be a great player, and hopefully this is the year he finally kind of pulls through on that. I mean, shouldn't even say that. Last year he was 3rd in the league for tight end receiving yardage, which seems weird because you never really thought of him in that group, but he's been quietly a really solid player.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to number 5, we have Mark Andrews from the Baltimore Ravens, and this is kind of where, for me, the second tier is. It's pretty much TJ Hockenson, Mark Andrews kind of tier, and that's like the 5 tight ends we've mentioned are the only guys that I would feel surefire. I know what they're going to do. I have really no question that they're going to be really good for my team, be happy to have them. And then after that, they slowly kind of get into the questionable range that it could be week to week if they're going to be good or not. But for Mark Andrews, the Baltimore Ravens passing game is only going to be getting better with Bateman getting there and with the Ravens wanting to throw the ball a little bit more. They are a run-heavy team, but Mark Andrews has always been one of the main targets for Lamar Jackson, and he's one of the most talented pass catchers they have realistically. And he did also have 88 targets, but he had 58 receptions for 701 yards. Yeah. So it was almost good to be, it was pretty much close to be a top 5 tight end for yardage. Yeah. And I think he's just going to have another great year if Baltimore decides to want to throw the football a lot more.
Yeah, that's the big thing in that offense. The volume is never going to be there. Andrews is capable of hitting big, but that's, to me, like, he's in the top tier, but he's the clear number 5 because that volume, it's not there. They added more pass catchers this year. I think they'll be a better NFL team. I'm not sure how that works with Andrews. But again, he's going to be a solid option this year. He always has, like, since he's come into the league, he's been solid. He's going to continue to just be solid.
I agree with you. And moving on to number 6, this is the first rookie off the tight end board, and it is Kyle Pitts from the Atlanta Falcons. Now, personally, me and Logan are a little bit indifferent on Kyle Pitts. He had him ranked at number 6. I had Kyle Pitts ranked at number 10. And I only have him ranked at number 10 is because I do not like putting rookies that high up in the list. And I totally believe Kyle Pitts has the talent. He will have the ability to have the share now that Julio Jones is gone. It's just him and Calvin Ridley. But him being a rookie, he's never seen regular season football against the best players in the NFL. He might be playing good in the preseason. I don't really care. It just means he's going to be good, but I don't know how fast he's going to be to get onto a quick start. And it is kind of famously known that first-year tight ends, even how good they are, they don't perform until year 2. Because it takes that 1 year to get into the swing of things. Because just look at T.J. Hockenson. He was a top 5 pick in the year he was drafted. First year, he didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
So I feel Kyle Pitts is in the same boat. He's been already coveted as a future Hall of Famer, most talented player that he was out of this draft class. But I don't really have a whole lot of faith that he could be a top 5 option. He will have the obvious ability to do it, and he has the target share most likely to get it done. But I just don't know yet.
Yeah, this is why I have him at 6. He's not in that top tier. He hasn't established himself. But if I'm going to take a shot on anyone outside of that top 5, it's Kyle Pitts. Because, again, all of history says he's probably not going to be that great. But also, he was probably the best tight end prospect, at least receiving-wise, that we've ever seen. He was a 4th overall pick. You don't see that from tight end. I think even Hockenson, he was a 5th overall pick, I believe. But he was he was a George Kittle type, big blocker, kind of also good in the receiving game. But he's more of the physicality. Kyle Pitts is an unbelievable receiver. So, to return on value, he would have to have, Evan Ingram, 2017, 115 targets, 64 receptions, 722 yards. If he could do that, I think you're probably getting your value back. But if he can be better than that, Evan Ingram's the one season we've seen from a rookie since Jeremy Shockey in 2002 that would even be worth having for fantasy. But I think he's a better player than Evan Ingram. I think the role in the offense is going to be there. And if it's not, you're drafting a tight end probably at this point. I'll say it this way. I'm probably never going to own Kyle Pitts because someone's going to fall in love with the prospect and take him early. Probably before a Mark Andrews or someone like that. But if he falls to the 7th, 8th round and you're taking him there, I think that's a great bet.
See, that's where I would I want to own Kyle Pitts because I'm an Atlanta Falcon fan. I just want him on my team because I would like to take the chance on him. But like you said, I don't want to take a chance on him if he's going to be one of the first 5 tight ends off the board.
Yeah.
I don't like the value. But if I'm taking him in the 8th, 9th round, where I think he should be going, then that's a chance worth taking.
Yeah, once he's into the kind of tight end shots, if I'm getting him over a Mike Gesicki or a Robert Tonyan or something like that, then I'm willing to make the investment. I'm not willing to go over one of these established names, though.
Yep. Speaking of one of those established names, moving on to number 7, we have Robert Tonyan from the Green Bay Packers. And Robert Tonyan was kind of a breakout tight end for last year. He averaged about 7.88 fantasy points per game. But I think one of the bigger numbers to look at is that Robert Tonyan had, give me a second, 12. Nope, he had 11 touchdowns. So 11 touchdowns from a tight end is exceptional, considering that the only other tight end to get that was Travis Kelce, who had 11 as well. But the only thing that kind of scares me with Robert Tonyan is that his target share, he only had 59 targets, but he had 52 receptions. So he was really efficient, but it was mainly only for touchdowns. He only had 586 yards, so he wasn't the main target, obviously, with Devontae Adams being there. And that's the one problem that's going to be for him again, is having Devontae Adams there. Aaron Jones just got paid. They're going to use him more in the offense. You'll see more of Robert Tonyan maybe in the red zone like he was last year, but you're not going to be getting a whole lot of work like these other tight ends that we've mentioned.
Yeah. He was a tight end 3 overall last season. And again, 59 targets. That's not a great number. Like the guys behind him, you're looking at Hockenson at 101, Mark Andrews with 88, Logan Thomas with 89, or 109, sorry.
Yeah.
Like those are much better numbers that I feel more comfortable with. 52 receptions is very good, but you're probably not repeating 52 receptions on 59 targets.
Yeah.
And then less than 600 yards. What kept him afloat was just he was scoring touchdowns. And we talked about this when we were talking about quarterbacks. We don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to have the same season. Like there's got to be regression from even in a throwing to passing touchdown or passing to running touchdowns, like they were basically all coming through the air last year.
Yeah.
Like even if they keep up the same team touchdowns, you're probably losing 5 or 10 passing touchdowns still. So I think if he scored 5 touchdowns last year, he's not even making the list. So again, he's capable. He's a great red zone option. It's just, if he doesn't score a touchdown, you're probably not happy with the week you get from him.
Yeah, the only reason he's really on this list for me is because I do believe that Robert Tonyan is probably the second option now in Green Bay. I think Aaron Rodgers has a lot more confidence in Robert Tonyan now, but that's the only reason. As you'd already mentioned, I don't have a full lot of confidence that he would get those amount of touchdowns again.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 8, we have Logan Thomas from the Washington football team. And personally, I love Logan Thomas. I have him ranked higher than this. I have him ranked at number 6. I love the ability that now he has Ryan Fitzmagic on the team, that he's just a gunslinger, likes to throw the football. The only thing that may be a downside for him is there's a lot of other weapons there that are a little bit better than him, with Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gibson and Curtis Samuel. But Logan Thomas was showing last year that even with bad quarterback play, he was exceptional. He was being one of the best options on that team, and he had a lot of red zone work as well, and that was with Dwayne Haskins and Alex Smith.
Yeah.
So if now you've added Fitzmagic to it, I think you may be getting him lower in your drafts, but I think for a tight end you want to take a shot on, I think he's totally worth that.
Yeah, this is the guy that I look at my rankings. I didn't have him in my top 12, and I say, you know what, that's probably a mistake. He looked good last year. He's convert. He just started playing tight end for the first time last year. He looked good doing it. My only concern is, again, you talked about Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Antonio Gibson, even J.D. McKissick will probably still be involved in the passing game. And then they drafted Diami Brown, who, rookie wide receiver, I think he's a guy who could end up with a role before the season's done. So there's a lot of mouths to feed, and I feel weird because it feels like I'm just kind of crapping on every tight end, but that's kind of what tight ends are.
Yeah.
You're hoping for something consistent, but in the end, you're probably just praying week to week that you get a touchdown. But yeah, Logan, there was so much volume there last year. If he can get that same volume again, he's basically a lock to be top 5, top 6, something like that.
Yeah.
If the volume comes down, who knows? So, really interesting player, though.
Absolutely. Moving on to number 9, we have Mike Gesicki from the Miami Dolphins. And now we're getting to the point of the tight end list where these are just shots in the dark. These are guys you have on your team, and you could totally miss on them. You could have a guy like him go for nothing, or you could have him go for a lot. It's just all a toss-up now. But with Mike Gesicki, he has Tua as his QB, and Tua is not really long. He does not bomb it a whole lot. He likes to do a lot of checkdowns, little short passes, and Mike Gesicki would be the beneficiary of that. Granted, last year, remember, there was one of our buddies that had Mike Gesicki that was consistently yelling at the TV, why are there other 3 tight ends that are catching the football other than Mike Gesicki? So that might be a problem in Miami now that they have Jalen Waddle, and they have Myles Gaskin coming into his own, Devontae Parker. They have a lot of options there, so Mike Gesicki is not the go-to guy. But if you're willing to take a guy later, Mike Gesicki might be a good option for probably a really good Miami Dolphin team.
Yeah, I like Gesicki a lot this year. Like, he's been pretty heavily involved in their passing game. The touchdowns have been an issue for him. He's not a huge touchdown guy. But I'm looking at their wide receiver room. Will Fuller, currently injured. Devontae Parker, currently injured. Jalen Waddle, currently injured. Mike Gesicki's going to be heavily... Like, all those guys struggle to stay on the field. They always have. Like, Jalen Waddle, maybe. I mean, he had injury issues in college as well. So, you never know. I think he's going to have a bigger part of that offense than people think. And if it's a lot of kind of quick passing with Tua, I think the tight end as a safety valve will be a good option. So that's a guy, again, it's a shot in the dark. You're hoping for the best, but that's a guy I'm willing to bet on this year as a late round tight end option.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I would take him. It's just a low end, like a later round.
Yeah, this is, you leave your tight end to the end of the draft, and this is one of the guys you maybe grab and hope for the best.
Yep. And to round out our top 10, we have Noah Fant from the Denver Broncos. And this is kind of the same situation as Mike Gesicki. We don't really need to talk about Noah Fant a whole lot, other than we're still unsure about what the quarterback's going to be for the beginning of the season. But regardless of who it is, that team, they have Cortland Sutton. Yeah. They have probably Javonte Williams, who I really like this year, who will probably be in there at some point. You can do everything. But Noah Fant's going to be one of the consistent pass catchers up the middle because Denver's going to be on the field a lot because they're going to be down in games.
Yeah.
So Noah Fant's going to be a big beneficiary of just down the middle dump passes. Even last year, when you look at his stats, he had 93 targets, 62 receptions, and 673 yards, which was good enough to be a top 8 fantasy option at the tight end spot, which you don't really think about from the Denver Broncos, but that's how it was last year. And I think, you know what, another year down, he might get a little bit better, might have a little bit better numbers, but we'll see how the quarterback play plays out.
Yeah, that's a guy, he was taken the same year as Hockenson, and it was Hawkinson's the all-around guy, and Fant is this dynamic receiving threat, which, I mean, we saw. He's one of the few tight ends who can take a ball and just house it running past DBs. Like, he's a freak athlete. The issue with him is the quarterback play. You don't, Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater. Do you really want either as your quarterback? I don't know. So it's the same issue like when you're looking at Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. That offense it's a little bit scary, but Fant has got all the talent in the world to come through for you. So again, this is a guy, I would not invest heavily in him, but if you're looking at dart throws at the end of the draft, he's as talented as anyone down there.
Mm-hmm. All right, and that rounds out our list. And I do want to bring up one thing. Some NFL news that has just come out recently before the video was filmed, that Dak Prescott is, right now the report is that he may not be fully back all season as he deals with last year's ankle injury and his recent shoulder strain, per Adam Schefter. Now, I think this is important to mention because if you have listened to our quarterback rankings, we really like Dak. We have him as a top 5 or 7 option at the quarterback position. I think this is now a little bit cause for concern. If they're not even sure he's going to be back all season or he's going to be missing a lot of time, I would kind of stay away from Dak in your drafts, especially now that this is getting around draft season. Drafts are going to start coming in full swing around now. I think you got to kind of take your look at Dak and maybe try to go a different route.
Yeah, I've been really in on that offense. It's assuming Dak's healthy, so if he's not healthy, then that's a little bit worrying.
That's going to hurt a lot of the Dallas Cowboy options. But,
yep.
All right. Thank you for listening to the Top 10 Tight End video. And if you want to just like and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Helps the channel grow. And make sure to check out all the other positional rankings. That way, before your draft, you can have our opinions on it. And maybe if you take it with a grain of salt, you might get a little bit lucky and have a good fantasy team this year. As always, I am Ryan.
And I'm Logan.
And thank you for listening. And we will be posting again on Tuesdays and Fridays at 9 a.m. And thank you for listening, and we hope to catch you guys in the next one.